Welcome to another edition of the Green Room Podcast. I am your co-host and producer, Andrew Kent, here alongside both of my co-hosts, Otto Keisker and Mark DiGiovanni. Look, I'm in a new spot this week. It's a lot brighter than it was last week, so I'm really happy about that. Last week, we talked about the tight end and safety position for the 2022 NFL Draft. This week, both Mark and Otto will give their top 5 rankings for the center and guard positions. But before we dive into those, let's talk about the Underwear Olympics, which took place this past weekend. Again, we are only 52 days now from the 2022 NFL Draft. So, guys, let's talk about the NFL Combine. What were your thoughts on this Combine this year? Let's begin with Otto.
This year's Combine, I mean, everybody's talking about it, just how fast these guys were running. Saw a cornerback run, a 4.23 on Sunday afternoon. And then what about the big guys? Geez, a pro. Jordan Davis, the talk of the Combine, 341 pounds, 4.7840, runs it faster than Mahomes. Just so impressive right there. And then Devontae Wyatt, his teammate, was right behind him. I saw one today. I believe it was the linebackers for Georgia, Walker and Tyndall ran the 4th and 6th fastest 40s among linebackers. Trayvon Walker was the 5th among edge. The D tackles I just mentioned were 1 and 2 in that class, and then Lewis Sine was 3rd among safeties. No wonder that team won the national championship. Impressive speed out of the Bulldogs. But outside of Jordan Davis, the other 2 guys I just wanted to mention that were big winners from the Combine this weekend. Kenneth Walker was a big winner for me. We've already touched on the running back position. I did not see the straight line speed on film that he ran at the Combine, 4.3840. Thought he was a little tight in the hips. He'd run you over, but he wouldn't run away from you. But that's a heck of a 40 time for him. So improved his stock there. And then the other one, Sauce Gardner. I mean, geez, I'm crow. Forget all of the measurements, forget all the tests, forget the fact that he didn't give up a touchdown, didn't give up more than 13 yards last year. The guy showed up supposedly to every single interview in a full-on suit, aced his interviews, and people are talking about him as maybe the best prospect ever. And one of the lines that I loved, they asked him, they said, "What separates you as a prospect?" And he said, "It's my mentality and the way I approach everything." He said, "I was a Detroit kid. I grew up in the projects. I've never drank a sip of alcohol or smoked a thing in my life." And he's showing up in a suit to every interview. I mean, class act kid with all the talent in the world. Go be a top 5 pick. Somebody take this kid. He's going to change your team. So that's really what stood out for me on the Combine. I could go all day about what I saw this weekend, but I'll stop there and give it over to Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Combine, I don't know about you guys, but I guess it was because the season finished later, but I felt like this Combine came like super quick than years past. And I think it's just because the Super Bowl ended a few weeks ago. But yeah, I think my biggest winner was Malik Willis. I mean, we all knew the talent was there. We knew this kid had a big arm, but I mean, he looked like Josh Allen throwing bombs down the field. Like you could see on some of those deep routes, he was just holding on to the ball as long as he could, be like, yeah, I'm just going to wait to chuck it 70 yards downfield. But yeah, I was going to say, Otto, I was going to talk about Gardner too. I think the kid's an unbelievable talent. And then, like you said, to show up with all your interviews in a suit and, taking it honestly, seriously, like this is like a business interview in a sense too. And a very smart kid. That's what I love about it too. But yeah, the Georgia Bulldogs, man. I mean, you can't say enough about their speed. Who was the receiver from Baylor? I think his name was Taquan Johnson, ran like a 4.4, like just impressive speed from the receivers. And then Chris Olave at Ohio State had blazing speed, like unbelievable stuff. But yeah, I think it was a fun, exciting Combine. And yeah, like Otto said, can't get enough of those big dogs running down the field. That was awesome. I love seeing the big boys run.
Yeah. And if I could throw in one more receiver, Mark reminded me of, we got Mark, the big Cincinnati Bearcat fan on here. The Cincinnati receiver, Alec Pierce, 6'3", runs a 4.3 340. What a 40 for a big man. So another guy there that showed out at the receiver class. We got a lot of speed coming out this year.
It's probably one of the most stacked classes in terms of athleticism. While not as great as at the quarterback position this year or a few other positions, at least it's really still a really entertaining combine, and I'm sure that we'll have a lot for our eyes to watch this year in the upcoming season when September rolls around. But let's begin with our deep dive into the center position for 2022 NFL draft prospects. Mark, why don't you begin with this topic and talk about the overall strength of the center position?
Yeah, I think the center position this year, there's really one guy that everyone has at the top of the list. And then, the rest of the talent seems to be like a middle of the way pick. So I'd say probably like overall, if I had a grade, I'd say probably it's like a C+ this year, just because there is that one guy. But you can also find a lot of good value. I think Otto and I will probably have similar lists here going forward for our top 5. But there's a lot of talent that you can get in the middle rounds, like the 3rd, 4th round. And I mean, these are the guys that you can find in the 3rd, 4th round that are going to help your offensive line depth down the road. They're cheap contracts. So, for some teams, like, for example, let's just have the Eagles, who have some guys tied up on that line, like Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks is tied up, but you can also draft a guy, to kind of be like that next guy in, and you can also have him as like a depth, kind of like what they did with Dickerson last year, and he actually played a big role for them. So that's what I kind of see from this class. Not quite like that type of talent, but solid talent that can develop into starting. Well, not stardom, but you know what I mean.
I got you. Yeah, all right. And then Otto, what teams do you think are in the market right now for a center position?
Center position, kind of like Mark said, this is a position where typically when you have a center, they can play any of the 3 interior spots. So we're going to talk about guard and center today. A lot of these guys are interchangeable and actually play both positions. So when you think about interior line needs, you could just easily say every team in the league. But for me, there's 3 that jump out the center position. One is Jacksonville. Jacksonville really needs help across the whole O-line. But when you think about great quarterbacks throughout the years, you think about their centers that go hand in hand with them, the biggest one being probably Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday. But you have Trevor Lawrence. You want to put somebody with him that can sees the field the same as him and really runs the protections for him. It starts with that position. So Jacksonville's one team. Another team on here I have is our Eagles. Jason Kelsey, we still don't know whether or not he's coming back. Starting to look like he might. But either way, his time is numbered. Dickerson, we thought would be a center. He's settled in at left guard. We don't want him to move away from that. So that's a team that has a need. And then the last one is the Los Angeles Rams. So their center is going to hit free agency here next week. Not expected to come back to the Rams, expected to get a heck of a payday from whoever is going to sign him in free agency. So again, they're looking to sign Matthew Stafford. Supposedly that's the rumor today, to an extension. You got to make sure that older quarterback can stay upright. So you got to put some young guys around him. And it starts with the pieces that you're losing, whether or not that may be the center position or Andrew Whitworth. So they're another team that's in the market there.
What about you, Mark? Got any teams in mind?
Yeah, I think, like Otto said, I'll just pick the Super Bowl loser, the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they need help all across that offensive line, protect Joe Burrow. Like Otto said, the Rams, they want to keep Stafford upright. Well, I mean, look at Joe Burrow. I mean, he took the most sacks out of anybody this season and postseason. They need him to stay healthy. And this kid already had an ACL, and he just got hurt again in the Super Bowl. They need to protect him. They need to build the Great Wall of Burrow, the Great Wall of Cincinnati. So that's one team that jumps off to me. Another team, I don't know what's going on up there in Seattle, but they plan on keeping Russell Wilson. I think it's about time they start building an offensive line for him, because it seems like his entire career, he's had a bottom 5 offensive line his entire career. He doesn't have the legs that he used to have because of all the hits he's taken. So if Russell Wilson's going to stay there, they need offensive line around him. So that's another team that jumps out to me.
Cool. All right. Well, with that, let's move into your rankings for your top 5 prospects at the center position this year. Otto, why don't we start with you now? Who is your number 5 center?
My number 5 center this year is Luke Fortner out of Kentucky. Fortner's 6'6", 300 pounds, so really, really tall for a center, right? But mean and nasty on the inside, plays everything to the whistle. His biggest issue is that at times he does get too tall. He gives up pad level, lets D linemen get underneath him, gets driven backwards. But he does a very good job of getting to the second level. When you think 6'6" and 300, he's not, he's a pretty athletic center. So, he moves pretty well. He does a pretty good job with his hands. Every now and then he shoots them out a little bit too early after the snap. But for the most part, pretty sound with his hands. And when he does get his hands on you at the size that he's at, he just absolutely stones defensive linemen. They don't move. That's obviously the perk of having that bigger center rather than having the smaller guy who's got lower pad length. So Fortner's my number 5 center. Not sure necessarily exactly where he'll go. Probably 5th, 6th round, in that range. You're probably not going to see a lot of centers drafted this year. When I'm looking through this class at least, but I think he's a good prospect there in the later rounds.
What about you, Mark? Who's your number 5?
Yeah, number 5 for me is Alec Lindstrom out of Boston College. Quick note on him. He was only one of 5 Boston College players ever to be named 2-time All-ACC first team. Huge honor there for him. The reason I kind of have him at 5 is because he is a redshirt senior, so a little bit older than what you want to see in your lineman or just any draft prospect. But he was an excellent pass blocker at his career at BC. He did pretty well in the run, but I think that's somewhere, if you read a lot of draft reports, say where he can improve and just getting off of that quicker first step. But I mean, very good player. I mean, that just speaks for himself. 2-time, first team All ACC.
All right, Otto, number 4.
My number 4 is Alec Lindstrom. So going right hand in hand with Mark here. I really like Lindstrom as a prospect. He's a guy that I've seen for some people having as their number 2 center. For me, he plays a little bit too tall at times. So my 2 knocks on him is that at times he plays a little bit too tall, again, gives up his pad level. And then the other thing is I did see him a couple times when he is down blocking, or when he's down blocking in a zone run scheme, or when he's just blocking against a lineman D lineman who's coming on a slant. He oftentimes gets driven backwards on those types of plays back into the backfield. He normally finishes off the block, but the running back sometimes has to make a cut too early on those zone runs. So it can be ineffective for the offense on those plays. However, I really, really like the angles that he takes as a blocker. He understands where the hole is. He understands how to block that hole off, turn his butt so the running back can make that cut. When he gets his hand on you, he does not stop until the whistle. You'll see him all the time running guys all the way into the whistle, running them over the pile. That mean, nasty finish you off and make you have to get up after every play and work for it. And that's what it's all about, playing on the interior line. You want one of those tough guys that makes you pay. So I really like Lindstrom. I can see him probably going 3rd, 4th round in the draft this year.
Back to you, Mark, number 4.
This is actually going to be really funny because I have Luke Fortner at my number 4 center. So I'm not just going, tick for tack here. But yeah, I like him a lot. Like I said, 6'6", 305, really big kid. Really athletic too. He actually played all 3 interior line positions at his time in Kentucky. Like Otto said, he stands up too much, which is a knock on him. But I mean, his ability, I think really the one thing I really like about him is his ability to get out in the screen game and use his athleticism. A lot of the Mark Stoops offense has been using those screen games with the running backs. I think he does an excellent job at that. So that's one thing that caught my eye, is just his athletic ability. And 6'6", 305 don't just grow on trees. So I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see where he goes, because I feel like what Otto said when he talked about Landon Dickerson, how he was drafted as a center. and he kind of fell into left guard, and that's where he's going to be. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to Forder where he goes, see if he actually becomes a center or if he plays one of the 2 guard positions.
Otto, number Trace.
Number 3 for me is Cole Strange, the center from Chattanooga. Love that name. He played left guard in college, so a little bit of a switch to center here. We'll see how he does. But again, you're going to see as we go through center and guard, a lot of these guys that have played a different position on the line, and they just need to find where they fit at the NFL level. But Cole Strange, I really, really like this prospect. He's a little undersized, which is why he's going to move from center or from guard to center in the pros. I kind of think he's built like Jason Kelsey when I rolled the tape on him. So, of course, that makes me love him a little bit more. He does a really good job of anchoring once he gets his hand on you. As an undersized lineman, he plays with really good pad level, so I love that. He's very, very patient with his hands. He stays in the box as a blocker, right? And he lets that D lineman make their move first, and then he shoots his hands. So that's a key thing for me as an offensive lineman. He has that patience. He stays balanced before he shoots his hands, and when he shoots his hands, doesn't get overextended a lot. So I really like that. And he also did a great job with blitz pickup and stunt pickup when he was playing at the guard position. I think that will translate to the center position. I think that's another reason why he's better off at center is because he's a very smart offensive lineman. Some of my knocks on him, he did struggle with larger defensive tackles, which is to be expected when you have an undersized center. Jason Kelsey's the best one in the league, and he got his butt kicked by Vita Vea in the playoffs this year. Undersized centers just struggle with 350-pound linemen. And then the other thing is Strange missed some bad blocks in the open field when he's down the field on screens and things. Not the biggest knock on me. I really, as a lineman going down the field, I just want you to get down there and get in people's way. I don't necessarily expect you to be able to get your hands on a shifty cornerback, but it was something that stuck out to me on tape there. But all in all, I really like Cole Strange. I think he's an athletic kid. I think he's really, really sound as a player, and he's a smart center. And, I think as far as where round he's probably going to go, 3rd, 4th round in there. But number 3 center, Cole Strange.
And who's your number 3, Mark?
Yeah, for me, it's Donovan West from Arizona State. Another big guy, 6'4", 300 pounds. I really liked him just because, again, his flexibility to play all 3 interior line positions. And I know Otto and I keep going back and forth. It's really hard to, some guys have, this guy's a guard as this guy's a center. So there might be some guys who we have as guards that we also might have as centers too. So, but yeah, Donovan West, every draft report you read is just his ability to get off the line. And watching some tape, I mean, he has a great first step. He beats the defender right off the snap, and that's what I really liked about him. Arizona State, they had a down year. I don't know what's going on out there in Tempe, Arizona, but yeah, I really like Donovan West. Was a 3-year starter for them, and I think he'll definitely be a solid prospect for somebody in the middle rounds.
Number 2, Otto?
My number 2 is Donovan West. Trade off with Mark there. Going off what Mark said, yeah, he's a smaller center. He's got a really good quick first step. Really, really strong, though, for a smaller center, which is what impressed me. It's part of why I have him at number 2. You see him anchor sometimes, and he's anchoring against bigger D tackles, and he's got him with one arm. So the strength, and that's not just the arm strength, that's the core strength, that's the strength in your legs to be able to do that. And then another impressive thing is he has the recognition to pick up stunts, delayed blitzes from linebackers, and sometimes he's one-handed here with this lineman, and he grabs that linebacker to save just enough time to get a throw off with the other hand. So the strength all throughout his body, really impressive. He's a really aware center. I love that. Like Mark said, he does a good job getting to the second level, got a good first step. My biggest block on him is that you notice at times when he's in the run game, he doesn't shoot his hands out straight. He shoots a shoulder, right? And he shoots a shoulder and he doesn't get his hands on you. And it's kind of a one-shot shoulder, and then the guy gets by him. So again, that's something you can coach up, but that's a knock on him, is that every now and then he goes to that shoulder, gives up some blocks, lets some tackles for a loss go. But all in all, really like this kid. Can definitely see this kid being drafted in the 3rd round at center. So yeah, Donovan West.
Mark, number 2.
Yeah, number 2 for me is a guy who earned a great nickname from Andy Reid at the Combine, Cam Beef Jerky Jurgens, from the University of Nebraska. Not too many good things going on up there in Lincoln. I don't know what's going on with Scott Frost. I think he might be on the hot seat out there, but they're pretty bad. But Cam Jurgens is one of their bright spots. As soon as you turn on the tape and you watch what this guy's done there, it's been incredible. He's 6'3", 307, but his ability to set an anchor and then get to the second level and gets out to those linebackers has been really impressive to me. And I mean, that's probably the only impressive thing that they have out there in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I don't know what's going on out there with those Huskers, but Cam Jurgens would be one heck of a player, and I can definitely see him going as an early day 2 pick.
They've just been getting beat up in the Big Ten conference for a while now.
And also, hey, great nickname, Beef Jerky, great nickname.
You think a team like that basically is probably the only sport they have in that state that they'd be really good, but just like how in Alabama, they're the only team in that state. They're amazing. Nebraska, though, they can't seem to replicate it. But like you said, at least one bright spot there in the center position. So that's at least one thing they can be happy about.
I guess the only thing they can look forward to in the state of Nebraska is the College World Series in Omaha in June. So I guess that's the only thing that state can look forward to, because their football team is terrible.
Exactly. That was you read my mind. All right. And let's get to both of your number 1s at the center position for this year's draft. Otto, who is your number 1 center?
Before I go to my number 1 center, I just want to say Nebraska is a heck of a wrestling team, so let's not forget about that sport. And as far as football and the draft goes, Mark, he's not the only bright spot. I talked about Austin Allen here last week. I don't know where you were, but heck of a tight end there. Jurgens a very good center prospect. Have him a little bit outside my top 5. Didn't love the fact he wasn't great against stunts up front. Didn't seem to pick up as many late blitzing linebackers, and then just your stunts between D tackle, D end. So I had him just outside my top 5 there. Number 1, it's everybody's number 1. Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. Mean, nasty, finishes, can pull, get to the second level, get out there on screens. He's great doing chop blocks, plays with great pad level in the run game. Really, really, really smart center in the pass game. He does a great job. One of the things that stuck out to me on tape. So I noted with Linderbaum that he loses depth sometimes when you have a D lineman that slants down in the run game. Linderbaum against slants either drives you into next year or allows you to go and takes you where you want to go and turns you out for that running back to have a lane. He does a really, really good job on that. And then, if you just want to see Tyler Linderbaum go crazy, you could turn on any film, but the one that stuck out to me, Mark talked about his love for the linebacker Brandon Smith from Penn State on our podcast last week. And I love Brandon Smith as well. I have a very high grade on him as a linebacker. Tyler Linderbaum owned him in the game against Penn State last year. I mean, he was on the second level, it seemed like half the plays, and every single time he ends up blocking Brandon Smith, and Brandon Smith was just nowhere. He took the guy out of the game. And when you're talking about a top linebacker and you've got a center that's able to do that, I mean, there's not much more praise you can give a guy. He took one of the most impactful players on that Penn State defense right out of the game, and it wasn't a guy who stands up face to face with him on a play. It's a guy that you have to run 5 yards down the field and then get your hands on. It's a heck of a job by Linderbaum. And, he's just an a great prospect. You don't see centers go in the first round, but you're going to this year because of how good he is. And if he didn't play the center position, he'd be top 5. Just a great all-around prospect.
And what about you, Mr. Mark? Who is your number one? Is it going to be a shocker, or will it just be what everyone else is expecting?
No, we're gonna keep it in the Big Ten. We're going with Tyler Linderbaum. I mean, like Otto said, dude's an incredible talent. Iowa's known for 3 things: the Field of Dreams, corn, and breeding offensive linemen. And it's just no shock that they have another top offensive lineman. I mean, Tristan Wirfs came out a few years ago as an incredible talent for Tampa Bay, and this kid Linderbaum's an incredible talent. One thing I was reading about him, he was the highest graded Pro Football Focus lineman this year with a 95.4 PFF grade. And like Otto said, just turn on the tape. Remember in The Blind Side, Michael Orr drives that kid to the buses? That's literally Tyler Linderbaum pretty much every single game. If you want to turn on the tape, watch The Blind Side, and then also watch Tyler Linderbaum. Incredible talent, great kid, great athleticism. And like Otto said, he's smart too. He kind of reminded me of Jason Kelsey at the college level a little bit. And he's definitely going to be a top 10, top 15 pick.
You just mentioned too the things that Iowa is most known for, but you also forgot about their men's basketball team and last year's MVP, in my opinion, and probably eventually will be an MVP in the NBA, Luka Garza, baby. Love that guy. Well, that does it for Mark and Otto's top 5 rankings at the center position for this year's draft. Now let's get into a sleeper pick for the center position. Mark, who is one sleeper you have at this position this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard, like Otto said, because they're kind of like all together. But I think a sleeper here is Thatcher Munford from Ohio State. This is another guy who kind of played a bunch of offensive line. He played all 3 positions, but he was pivotal in their run game this year. And I think he's probably not as high on a lot of people's boards, but I think he's got great athleticism. And obviously, that's what the Big Ten is known for, is offensive linemen. I mean, Otto and I have a ton of our, big boards, have guys from Nebraska, Iowa. So, yeah, I think Thatcher Munford's another guy you could see him really late, like maybe a day 3 pick, but I really like his talent at Ohio State.
And what about you, Otto?
My sleeper's James Empey from BYU. A little bit undersized center, 6'4", 303. But pretty athletic center, does a really good job getting to the second level, does a pretty good job pulling, good job with stunt recognition and pickup. He does miss some, but a pretty good job there. The misses there is kind of why he's outside of my top 5, that and the size. But he does anchor pretty well, gets blown up by the really big defensive tackles, but anchors pretty well, for your normal size D tackles. And every now and then loses a block in the run game by, again, shoulder blocking, like I talked about with Donovan West. But I do like the athleticism with Empey. I think that he plays with good pad level at that height, and you can coach him up on some of these things at the next level because he's got the God-given athleticism. So I think he's a pretty good sleeper there at that position. You can get him in the 7th round potentially. So.
And as we do every single week for each position, who is one player in your mind that would fit perfectly at the center position for the Eagles in this draft? Let's start with Otto again.
Tyler Linderbaum. I mean, I'm not greedy, but give me the best guy in the draft. I mean, we've seen it mock there. I've been talking about Linderbaum being one of the 3 first picks for the Eagles if they keep all 3 since the season was still going on. I just think that the Eagles, they've shown how important it is for them to build through the line. Howie Roseman puts a huge emphasis on building through the trenches. If you're going to let Jason Kelsey's going to retire eventually, what better to do than just to fill him in with the best young center we've seen in a while. And then you have an O-line where, Lane Johnson was the best right tackle in the league this year. You've got a great left side with Dickerson and Mailata that are young. You put in Linderbaum, and then you've got Sumalo at right guard. So Tyler Linderbaum for me, I heard that he struggled in his interview with the Eagles, though. I heard he only hit 1 out of 5 balls in the mini hoop. But I loved his answer to that when he turned around to the Eagles and said, "I'm not a basketball player. I'm a wrestler." That's what I was really known for. So that was a great answer out of Linderbaum, and we'll see. But he's in a lot of mock drafts. Hopefully the Birds can keep that position with a stud for years to come after Kelsey retires.
Hey, you know what? We don't even need him in the city of Philadelphia on our basketball team, the Sixers, because we have James Harden and Joel Embiid now. So I think we'll be fine with him just being on the Eagles and not as a basketball player too. What about you, Mark? Who's one player that comes to mind for the Eagles?
Yeah, I really want to say Tyler Linderbaum too, because he's pretty much everything that they need. And like I said, I already pretty much comped them to Jason Kelsey, so I'll just roll with it. You can't go wrong with them. I mean, like I would say, he's in every mock draft. He's either going to the Eagles or he's like in that like range between 15 and 20. I think it just depends on what happens in the quarterbacks. Because I think Malik Willis, I think someone's going to trade up to get Malik. But yeah, I really like Linderbaum and like Otto. So that was actually one thing I was going to note about him was his wrestling background, because he has really strong legs and great core strength. So I was going to note that, but I'll note it here. But yeah, I think he would be perfect. And yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with Jason Kelsey, but if Kelsey does leave, like Otto said. The only thing I disagree with Otto was at right guard, Isaac Seumalo will not be there because we already know his story, that he is history. So I definitely think Nate Herbig will be the right guard moving forward. And if let's say you get Linderbaum and Kelsey still your center, you can put Linderbaum at right guard. But Seumalo is definitely not going to be on the Philadelphia Eagles in the 2022 season.
Okay, Mark. Okay, General Manager Mark DiGiovanni. Yeah, okay.
How do you know? How does he know how?
You know what? How about on air in front of everybody, Mark? I bet you a beer that Isaac Seumalo is on the Eagles roster in 2022.
I think he's a cap casualty. I'll take that bet. Let's go. I'll take the beer.
Okay, great, wonderful.
It's not bad.
We'll send each other a Venmo. We'll send each other a Venmo if we don't get to see each other. Or next time, do you want to do it next time in person, or you just want to send the Venmo? I think we should do next time in person.
No, we're gonna do it in person because you're gonna watch me enjoy that beer that you bought me.
Yeah, Otto, we got to put that on TikTok. That's a good TikTok moment right there.
All right, boys. Well, that does it for the center position. Now let's get into the guard position for this year's draft. We began with Mark to kick off the center position in terms of talking about the overall strength of that position. So let's go to Otto. Otto, how good is this position this year?
It's really not that strong this year. When I look through the prospects, we might have one guy who sneaks into the back end of the first. And when I say sneaks in, I think we all know how Cincinnati has a need on the interior O-line. Mark already talked about him at center. They're sitting there at 31, so that could be a spot where a guard goes. But it wouldn't shock me if none of them are in the first round. To be quite honest, I don't have a first-round grade on any of these guys. I think there's some depth once you get into the middle rounds, but the top-end talent's just not there with this draft class. And then once you get outside of like some of the top guys, you get some of those tweeners that again are transitioning from tackle to guard. And when I see that, it just doesn't overly excite me because you're teaching the guy at the next level. So you're not getting Quentin Nelson who's stepping in and is going to be an all pro in the first year. You're getting a guy who you still got to teach. So as a whole, I really don't think this is a strong year for the guard position.
And Mark, who is a team, in your opinion, that is in the market for the guard position?
Yeah, I think you can kind of throw every team in there because I think every team just needs offensive linemen. It's just one of those positions year in and year out, every team can go. But a team who stands out, I know we touched on Cincinnati a bunch and we talked about the Rams. The two teams went to the Super Bowl. I think another team could possibly be like the Miami Dolphins. We know they brought in Mike McDaniel, who's big into the run game. He was the run game coordinator in San Francisco, now coming to Miami. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there on that offensive line. They have a lot of cap space. I think they'll go out and sign a lineman that can protect Tua, but they also need some young bodies on that offensive line too. So I can definitely see Miami getting an interior guard here.
And your thoughts, Otto, on that?
I had Miami on my list as well as Mark. They were the lowest graded O-line last year in the league. So definitely Miami looking there. Already noted Cincinnati. And another one that sticks out to me is Houston. They need more help all along that line. You got to assume eventually that Deshaun Watson won't be there, whether or not they stick with Davis Mills or go elsewhere. With another young quarterback is yet to be determined. However, that's a roster that's building in every single aspect. And when you think about how to build a team correctly, we always talk about it's building through the trenches. So why not go out and get some talent in the interior O-line? So Houston's another team right there.
Well, now it's time to dive into your guys' rankings for this position. Mark, who is your number 5 guard in this year's draft?
Yeah, number 5 for me, I got Marquis Hayes from Boomer Sooner, Oklahoma, 6'4", 314. The biggest note I have on him is his ability to knock defenders off base and then creating lanes for runs and passes. I know Oklahoma had a quarterback controversy down there, but he was definitely one of their bright spots. He definitely opened up the run game for them and opened up passing lanes for Caleb Williams when he did take over in the second half of the season. So, I got Marquis Hayes as my number 5.
Otto, who's your number 5?
Yeah, just quick on Marquis Hayes. I have him outside of my top 5. I know the talent's there. He has the ability to blow people off the ball, but there are too many times on tape where he doesn't fire off or he stands straight up or he pulls and he doesn't hit anybody. So I just question how bad he wants it. So I put him outside my top 5, although the talent I know is there with him. Number 5 for me is Tyler Smith from Tulsa, 6'5", 330, played left tackle in college. With the build that he has, I do think he's better for guard in the NFL, and that's where these teams are looking at him. Does a very good job at getting to the second level. He has a good first step out as a pass blocker. Obviously, that's not as necessary if you're playing on the interior of the O-line versus playing the tackle position. But again, good first step is always a good thing in pass blocking. One thing that was a negative on his pass blocking first step is that sometimes when he takes that first step, he shoots his chest up too high, gets standing too tall, and that puts his balance kind of on his heels, too far over his butt. And it also doesn't allow him to get good pad level when he shoots his hands. So that was one thing that I noted in his pass blocking. But as far as once he gets his hands on you in the passing game, did a really good job of kind of stoning the defensive lineman once he gets his hand on him. Pretty good driving him downhill as well in the run game, which I think he'll be even better at guard, just with that, his size, and then not having to worry so much because he has one guy on each side of him, just being able to go straight forward more downhill rather than cut an angle off being at tackle. So I like the prospect there. Be interesting to see how he transitions over to the guard position.
What about your number 4, Mark?
Yeah, Otto already had this guy in his top center rankings, but I've seen him listed at guard too. And I have Colt Strange too from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. One thing about him, I know Otto went to death, but I really like his hands. He has jackhammer hands. You can see it on tape. Everyone has that in his draft profile. His ability to just go boom, 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 block, knock people off the line. And he's got great footwork and has great recovery, especially when he gets beat. He has the ability to slide and stay on that anchor and keep them out of and keep the defenders out of the backfield. So I got him at number 4. I know like some people have him at center or guard. A lot of these interior positions, a lot of these guys can be interchanged. So that's where I have Colt Strange.
And as for you, Otto, your number 4?
My number 4 is Darian Canard from Kentucky. So Canard's another guy who's transitioning to the guard position from the tackle position. 6'5", 345. I actually question this transition. He's working at guard right now. So that's where I put him because that's where the NFL teams see him. But I'm not totally sold on it. I think he can still play the tackle position. So that's actually, it's a question mark as to whether or not you're going to teach him up to be a guard, but it's also a positive because when you think about a guy who's probably going to be a middle round pick, you're getting a lineman who can play multiple positions, and that versatility on the O-line, where we all know there's so many injuries, can be really helpful to a team. So anyways, Canard, he does play with high pad level due to that height, that tackle height. Sometimes leans a little bit too much in the run game. So he'll be trying to get that pad level lower, right? Get down into those linemen, get a shoulder into them maybe. And he leans too far to get that pad level because of his height. And then he starts to fall forward and loses blocks. However, I really, really like him in the pass game. First of all, he's huge. When he gets his hands on you, you're done. And it's going to be even better at guard because you don't have that corner that you can cut. But two, he's incredibly patient in the pass game. He's never shooting his hands too early. He always makes the defender make the first move before he shoots those hands. And that's just something that you don't see as much of in the college game is that confidence and that patience in the passing game. So that's one thing that I really, really like about him. And I think it'll be even better at the guard position because, again, you're on the interior of that O-line. There's not as many places to go for those defensive tackles.
Mark, who's your number 3?
Your number 3 for me is Dylan Parham from the University of Memphis. And quick note on this guy. Not only is he another big guy, like all these guys are all 6'3", 6'4", but this guy was actually a track and basketball star as well as a football star in high school. And you can really see that on the field. He's got very nimble feet and he's a freak athlete, especially when he comes around and pulls on plays to the outside. He is just blowing people up, pancaking them to the ground. I mean, look at all the running backs who came out of Memphis while he was there. You know, Antonio Gibson, Kenny Gainwell, Tony Pollard, just name a few. Antonio Gibson's another guy. The reason those guys are racking up so many yards is because of Dylan Parham. And yeah, I really like his athleticism. I think that's why I got him at number 3. And you can totally see that the other sports have helped him make this transition. But yeah, he's got the ability to play center too. So definitely a freak athlete there. And that's why I got him at 3.
Otto?
My number 3 is Jamari Salyer from Georgia. I love this prospect. I turned on the tape on this guy, absolutely fell in love. 6'4", 325. He played left tackle last year. So again, a guy who's transitioning to guard, but when you look at him on tape, you absolutely see that his body is built for the guard position. I think this will be an easy transition for him. He is a phenomenal pass blocker. Okay. He did a great job on Will Anderson from Alabama in both games, but especially in the first game against Anderson. The patience that I just talked about, everything stays in a phone booth with Salyer. He's again 6'4", so a little bit shorter for a guy who played tackle in college. He's going to be perfect size for a guard, but stocky. Everything's tight. He keeps his hands in tight. He keeps great balance, and he has that patience that I just talked about with Canard before shooting his hands. Phenomenal patience in the pass blocking game. Doesn't stop his feet from moving, right? Keeps them moving and engages at the right time. Does a great job and has balance when somebody comes to bull rush him, which he's going to get more of once he moves inside to guard. So I think that's a really important note. He did a great job as well of picking up stunts, right? So he's typically picking up a looping linebacker or a looping defensive tackle, but the recognition was great. Obviously that's even a little bit more important on the interior D-line, because that's typically where your blitzing linebackers hit even a little bit more of. So having that understanding is something that he has. My biggest knock on him is that he's probably not the most athletic guard. He's not going to be pulling too much. He's really going to be a downhill road grader, sound pass blocker. He's not going to be a guy you want running down the field in the screen game or anything. But as far as just incredibly sound pass blocking and, will be great in the man-to-man run game downhill, Jamari Salyer from Georgia.
Mark, who do you got as your second overall guard?
Yeah, number 2, I'm going back to BC, and I know this guy's name has brought up a lot of controversy in New Orleans for a different name, but I'm gonna go with Zion Johnson. I know the Zion down in New Orleans, they're having problems down there, like I said, with the weight issue, but let's just stick with Zion Johnson. Big 6'3", 314. That's what you gotta love about a big guard like that. He's a smart physical blocker. Everywhere you read is just his physicality and his aggressiveness. And that's what you gotta love about him. And obviously played with Alec Lindstrom. They had a really good offensive line up there in BC. So yeah, I got Zion number 2 for me.
Your number 2, Otto?
Number 2 for me is Kenyon Green from Texas A&M. Similar build to Salyer, 6'4", 330. Really, really good player. This is a guy who could end up being back end of the first round. If not, he'll be in the second round. Solid in both the run and the pass game, plays with really, really good pad level. At sometimes what I found on tape is that he gets impatient and shoots his hands too early. Right. And then the defender, whatever it may be, but typically just sheds those hands by and then keeps on moving. And along with that, it sometimes leans a little bit too much in the run game against defensive slants, and loses some traction there, allows guys into the backfield. But for the most part, really, really sound blocker. Again, stays in the phone booth, plays with extraordinary pad level, which I really, really like. And he does a good job for a bigger guard of getting to the second level. So that's something that's why I have him ahead of Salyer here. And he finishes every single play. You do see him running guys over, running them to the ground, which I just can't get enough of. You got to take him to IHOP and pancake him a couple times and make him feel it. So Kenyon Green does that, and he's going to be fun to watch at the next level.
Mark, you're number 1.
My number 1 is Kenyon Green. I think finally, Otto and I finally have a guy in our top 5 that comes at the very end. But yeah, Kenyon Green, 6'4", 325, huge size, absolute huge size. I know I noted this when we talked about the running backs and Isaiah Spiller, how Jimbo liked to use those shotgun runs, and he was a big part of that. Having him come out and pull on those runs, and even when they just ran it right behind him, he was a huge, great in the run game for them this year. But he was an immediate starter for Jimbo's squad. Came in as a freshman, 5-star recruit, and started from day 1 as a freshman. That's what I like, just his experience. All 4 years as a starter. I really like that. I think a lot of teams like that too. Confident kid, and he is just an absolute road grader in the run game. Look out when this guy gets in the open field. And yeah, I think like Otto said, I think he's going to be a late first round pick, but if he's not late first, he's definitely gone within the top 10 in the second round.
What about you, Otto? You're number 1.
Mark and I are flip-flopped here. I got Johnson at number 1. Maybe it's my New England bias for the BC kid. But Johnson to me, just all around really, really good player. I think he's a better blocker than Kenyon Green is. In the pass game specifically, does a really good job of not shooting his hands too early, staying in that phone booth, staying balanced. He's really good in man and zone run schemes. Excuse me. Once he gets his hands on the D lineman, you don't typically see them engage. He does a great job in the zone run scheme of shooting up to the second level. A lot of times with him and Lindstrom, it starts as a double team, and then he was the guy that released and got to the second level. He didn't just, here, Lindstrom, push him off that way, and then I'll move on. He really pops the guy. He makes that first hit, puts that guy stumbling so that his center has an easy block once he releases, and then he goes and he gets the second guy, right? And he does the same thing with stunts and delayed blitzes in the pass game. He lays a shoulder. When he sees that coming, he does a great job. He shoots up, he lays a shoulder on the first guy because he doesn't have to engage him with his arms, and then he immediately backtracks, gets his weight underneath him again, and comes over and picks up the delayed blitz or the stun. So I think that, he's a guy with great recognition, really, really good technique, The only knock that I have on him is that every now and then he shot his hands a little bit too early in the pass game. And then he missed some linebackers and DBs down the field when he was pulling. But again, I've already talked about this on the podcast. I just want you to get in their way down the field. You don't have to get your hands on them. You don't expect a 340-pound guy to be able to, stick with some 200-pound shifty corner. But Johnson to me just really, really sound, does a great job. And then to Mark's point, this guy is just nasty. Okay, he finishes every single play to the whistle. You're going to turn on the tape and you're going to see here's the mosh pit of people, right? And the running backs being held up and they're blowing the whistle and everybody's starting to disengage. And Zion Johnson's over there running a guy 5 yards down the field, way away from the play. But he plays to the whistle and he makes you work for it. And that's what you want. That type of tenacity is just contagious on an O-line and an offense. And so he's my number one guy here. And again, similar to Green, I think it's either late first round or second round for Zion Johnson.
And speaking of late round, who is one player at the guard position who could potentially be a sleeper? Let's go back to Otto.
My sleeper at guard is a guy that Mark actually had in his top 5. It's Parham. When you look at where he's being mocked and talked about, they have him in the later rounds, probably because of his size. He's a smaller guard, 6'2", 285. But Mark already talked about it. He's incredibly athletic, might be the most athletic guard, which again comes with the size of 6'2", 285. He plays with great pad level because of the height, but he also anchors really, really well for someone who's undersized. He'll give up a step or two when he anchors, but he's not getting driven back into quarterback's laps. At times he struggles with, again, a huge defensive tackle, but that's something you got to give up. I do think, though, that he does a good job of angling off, right? So when he's against those bigger guys, he's not just going to go straight on with them. He's going to try to take an angle so that when he goes to drive into him, he's driving him sideways. He's driving him away from where his quarterback wants to, where his quarterback has his landing spot to make his throw. So, Parham is my sleeper. Really love him as an athletic guard who can pull. And he's a guy that, you can get this guy in the 4th, 5th round and he'll make a difference for you. And he put on a pretty good show down at the Senior Bowl. So, a lot of people have been talking about him since then.
As for you, Mark, your sleeper?
Yeah, my sleeper, I'm hoping I'm saying his name right, is Lexus Smith from Virginia Tech. And he's been on Pro Football Focus. He's one of their top guys that they have on their big board. It's interesting to see because when he actually came to Blacksburg, Virginia, he actually came in as a tight end recruit before making the change over to left guard. So another athletic guy who can get out and get on the, oh my gosh, in the run game and pull out. That's what I was looking for, was pull. I don't know why I completely blanked, but he is a great pulling guard, great athleticism. And I think his ability when he came in as a tight end really helped him make the transition. He's got good length. I think the one thing that knocks him is just his football IQ. I think he can be a little bit smarter, needs to get a little bit quicker off the line, but does have the athletic ability to fix that. There's some coaching issues with him. I definitely think he can be a late round pick. But I think it's interesting that he was a tight end. Now he's a guard. And I really like him.
And again, with the Eagles, who's a player at the guard position that you guys would really like to see on the team? But, at the same time, though, Howie Roseman probably won't pick the right player anyway, so this probably doesn't really matter. But Mark, who's one guy that you would like to see at this position on the Eagles?
Yeah, like we've been saying, the Eagles definitely do need help on the interior line, possibly at center and definitely right guard. I think a guy can help them. It just depends what they do in the first round, but I think a guy like Zion Johnson, who's definitely probably going to be there in the second round with their pick, like Otto said, he's downright nasty, and he could fit right into that guard position that's kind of missing right there. I know the Eagles have Herbig and possibly Sayamalu to play that position. But I'm not really sold on those guys as stated earlier. So I definitely think a guy like Johnson could, step right in and become that guard for him.
And you, Otto?
I don't think the Eagles need a guard. They already have Isaac Sumalo, but I struggled with this one. So I don't think that the Eagles are going to double down on the interior line in the early rounds. I do think one of their first, let's say they keep all 3 first rounders and they stay put on their second and their third round picks. I do think that they will definitely take an interior lineman with one of those 5 picks, if not one of the first 4. However, if I say they're going to take Linderbaum in the first, I just don't think that they're going to take 2 O-linemen in the top 4. So that kind of keeps me away from my top guys, where I was going to say somebody like Jamari Salyer, who I already talked a lot about. So, you know, I think that being able to play a swing position is big. So one of the guys that I talked about at this position already, who's transitioning from tackle, is Canard. I'm not sold on him specifically being a guard. I think that he can play guard or tackle. The Eagles' current setup with the O-line, you have Andre Dillard at backup left tackle, who can't play backup right tackle. So if you bring in Canard, you not only have a guy who can play at the guard position if you need him to, but he can also play right tackle if Lane Johnson was to get hurt. That's what he played in college. And I think that you can get him more in the 4th or 5th round there, where they're more apt to be going around for a second time on these interior O-linemen. So Canard's the guy I got for the Eagles there.
All right, boys. Well, that does it for both the guard and center positions in terms of the deep dives and your rankings. Of course, had a great time listening to all of your picks and a few surprises here and there. But we're running a little short on time here, so let's go through these 2 segments real quickly, as we do every single week. Both of your sleepers of the week, as well as your draft crunch of the week, and then we'll end it off with a bad beat of the week. So, Mark, who is one sleeper at any position for this week that is your sleeper of the week?
Yeah, I'll go quick, Andrew. My sleeper is Slade Bolden from Alabama. He has been a bad man at Alabama. I know everyone talks about the 1 and 2 wide receivers, John Mechie and Jameson Williams, and those guys are great talents. And even last year, you know, they had Devontae Smith. But Slade Bolden has been that reliable target in the slot for Mac Jones and Bryce Young. I think he's in a really good talent. I think he's definitely going to be a sleeper. He's going to be like a Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Julian Edelman type slot receiver. I think he's going to be very dynamic at the next level. And yeah, he played a huge national championship game when Mechie and Williams went down. And yeah, he was the number 1 target for Bryce Young. I really like Slade Bolden a lot.
What about you, Otto? Who is your sleeper of the week?
My sleeper this week is Malcolm Rodriguez, linebacker from Oklahoma State. Really athletic linebacker. He ran a 4.52 this past weekend at the Combine. But one thing that stuck out to me when I turned on the film with him is played great against the pass. So he's playing in the Big 12. We all know nobody wants to defend the pass in the Big 12, and all the offenses do is pass. But he plays it really, really well. He does a really good job of dropping into zones. He does a really good job of reading quarterbacks' eyes and even baiting them at times. So good in the pass game, which is tough to find as a linebacker. He's a hard hitter, and he does play in the backfield sometimes with tackles for loss, and he's a sound tackler. He brings his hands for the most part when he's tackling, which I love in a linebacker. And then they talked about him a little bit on NFL Network this weekend with the Combine, and just how much of a leader he's always been. And he was actually, to stick with my wrestling theme here, I love my wrestlers, and it translates over to the game of football so well. But he was a state champion wrestler in Oklahoma in high school, and after football practice, he leaves the football field and he walks over to the wrestling room at Oklahoma State, and he wrestles with their Division I wrestling team, which is not just any team, it's top 10 in the country. So he gets a workout in football, and then he goes over and he practices his hand placement, right, and his hips and all that by wrestling some of the top guys in the country. So love a guy like that. Just can't get enough of getting a workout and a sweat on, and I think he's going to make a difference. Not a guy a lot of people are talking about there.
And then what about your draft crush of the week, Otto?
Draft crush this week. It's hard after the combine. They talk up everybody. Everybody's great. And they've got a lot of good prospects this year. But one that stuck out to me this week is David Ojabo. Constantly been going through this defensive end class and rewatching the guys at the top and reordering my top 5 and what do we want? And all of them have different skill sets. Ojabo to me, though, when I turned on the film this week, I mean, I actually turned on Michigan film this year. I'm not gonna lie. Didn't know Aiden Hutchinson or Ojabo. Didn't have any idea what they look like, and had heard Hutchinson's name somewhere without seeing a picture of him or a number. Turned on Michigan and saw David Ojabo get a couple sacks in a game, and was like, "Oh, that's Hutchinson." No, it's Ojabo. The first step, incredible. Ran a 4.55 this weekend at the combine, but to me, this kid, for a guy who's barely played any football like they talk about, he does a great job shedding hands in the pass game. He has a great job with that stop-start move. And then he's got a spin move, both an inside spin and an outside spin. So you're talking about a guy who's just learning the game. Seems like he knows it pretty well as a defensive end. I think he might be the best pure pass rusher in the whole class when it's all said and done. And then the knock on him is that he doesn't want to play against the run, but he did a heck of a job in the Penn State game playing against the option when he was in on run plays. And I think that that's something that you just teach him at the next level, and it's infectious, right? As you see other guys make hits, you want to make hits. But the one thing that stuck out to me, and this is where I'm totally just sold on Ojabo. They told this kid, okay, you're new to football. Here's the biggest deal. When you get to the quarterback, don't just sack him, go for the ball. This kid had 5 forced fumbles this year, 5 of them. And we all know in the NFL, if you're a defensive end, the most important thing is getting a turnover or causing a turnover. The second most important is a sack, right? Kid had 11 sacks this year. He had 5 forced fumbles. He does the things that you have to have out of an elite pass rusher. And I just can't say enough about the kid. He's going to get coached up to the next level and be even better. David Ojabo is the draft crush this week.
As for you, Mr. Mark, your draft crush of the week?
Yeah, I mean, like Otto said, everyone at the combine. Everyone's great. Everyone should be a first-round pick. But my pick was Jordan Davis. We know the hype around him. And how about that big boy running a 4.78? Where's Stephen A. Smith saying this boy is a bad man? I really like Jordan Davis. He's definitely my crush this week, man. I love watching the big guys run the 40. He beat out Rich Eisen. And that's another thing. That's a bad beat of the week for me. Why does Rich Eisen I understand the run, Rich run. It helps out St. Jude, right? How come the guy runs it in a suit? Like, why doesn't he just put on like gym shorts and just run? Like, why is he in a suit running in cleats? Just like, dude, put on some sweatpants, put on some shorts, get a t-shirt on, run in normal clothes, you idiot.
Wait, time out. So Mark's going to give Sauce Gardner all the props for showing up in a suit. Then he's going to hate on Rich Eisen for wearing a suit?
Well, not to run the 40? You're going to run the 40 in a suit? I mean, come on. I mean, that would be like him going on like national TV, like looking like us, like in t-shirts. I mean, dude, you're on the field. Like, why are you wearing a suit? Just put on gym clothes and run. I don't get it.
You know what? I want to see Mark put on the suit and run faster than Rich Eisen now.
Let's go.
You know, I'm thinking Rich in the suit is being held back. He might be faster than you.
Bull crap. Rich Eisen, I hate you. Let's run the 40. I'll put on a suit. All right. It's royal blue. I'll probably be sweating through it. But yeah, I challenge Rich Eisen to the 40. And I think, I don't know. That's my thoughts on Rich Eisen. I just don't get why he doesn't put on a t-shirt and shorts and run the combine like everyone else. Like, why are you wearing a suit, bro?
We'll make sure to put that on Twitter just so we can get this rumbling eventually from Mark.
I mean, I just don't get why he's in a suit. Like, dude, just like, it's easy. Just go in the back, change, run, and put the suit back on. I don't get why he runs a 40 in a suit.
Hashtag run, Mark, run.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get that trending.
Well, my bad beat of the week was going to be the Eagles with a basketball hoop at the combine, but we don't really have enough time for that now. The only reason why I was going to mention it is because it's really stupid. There's no need for it, but that's just my thought. Anyway, guys, that's all the time we have this week on the Green Room Podcast. I am your co-host and producer, Andrew Kent, alongside both Mark DiGiovanni and Otto Keisker. Next week, both Mark and Otto will dive into 2 new positions. Well, I guess they're going to do a combine because nobody likes either one of these positions, but the kicker and punter position. Cannot wait for that. See you guys next week.